Our goal now is to do what? Yes, let me comment this out. Yeah. So this will just work fine, although the GPA is only applicable to students and not applicable to faculty. Provided that you will get some errors in here, you can ignore them. There is something. Cannot retrieve. Yeah. Yes, it will tell you some error like this, but it still works. But if you don't, if you to do it properly without this error, instead of using this simple set value factory, don't use the simple way. And this is why they call it value factory. Now you will start appreciating why they called it a factory. So what you get here, you give it a lambda function. Can you see it here? Lambda function. In this cell data, it gives you a row. It will give you the instance that will be displayed in that row. It could be a student or not. It will give you the full instance. You go to that cell data and you say, please give me the value. This will give you the member. It gives you the member the table is trying to display in that row. Then what I'm doing here, I'll say, are you a student? If yes, I will return the GPA property. Otherwise, I return an empty string property. Yeah. Same thing for the office. For the office, I'll do cell data get. I'll get the value. Can you see it here? And say, are you an instance of faculty? If yes, return the office property. Otherwise, return simple string property. So this gives us the desired behave without any of those errors. Yeah, and this is what it means by the cell faculty. The cell value factory. The cell value factory, you are telling the table, you basically telling the table how you will fill up each column. In here, it's not as simple as go to this attribute or read the attribute and put the value in the cell. No, you will get the full instance of the row that you're trying to display, and you make a decision how you want to display the cell. In here, we make a decision based on what? Based on the type of the member we're trying to display. If the type is a student, we will return the GPA property. Otherwise, we will return an empty string property. If in the case of the office, we'll check the data type of the member. If it is faculty, we return the office property. Otherwise, we return an empty simple string property. It's clear? So this way I have this value dynamic, not just always one same thing. It depends. If it is student, I'll get the GPA. If it's not student, I'll get an empty string. And the same for office. It's clear now how I display the subclasses on the same table by simply having a slightly different set cell value factory. Is clear? Now what is remaining now is the editor. Remember the editor here? I get same editor. This is for students and same editor for faculty. So the way I do it, of course many ways of doing it, I try to make it as simple as it can be. So what I have here, this is the member editor. If I go to SimBuilder, I added 2 more rows and I added GPA. Can you see it here? I added the GPA and I added the office. I added both. And then you can tell here already, if it is a student, I will do the binding of the GPA with the GPA text field. And also I deleted this row, removed it, so it's not visible to the user. And vice versa. If the member is faculty, I do the binding between the faculty, the office property, and the office text box. And I delete the row of the GPA. I didn't bother, I could have moved the rows that up, but let's keep it, we can tolerate that little space. You can see here, you can tell that there is some extra space in there for the faculty, but it's fine. Here is the update. You can see this line here is empty because I removed it and I didn't move things up. Okay, so let me show you the code. So as we already discussed last time, this form is opened as a dialog box. This form is opened as a dialog box. Now in this member controller, there is a method here called SetMember. Yeah. In this SetMember, I'm doing all the binding. Can you see here the binding? This one you already know how to do. So in here I am binding the ID property with the ID field, binding the first name property with the first name field, and doing bind bidirectional binding. Yeah, I'm doing it this way. Now for the student, I get a member. Yes, I get a member, and then I test. I say, are you a student? Is the member instance of student? If yes, I go ahead and do the binding. I bind, I say go and bind the GPA field text property, bind it with the student GPA property. And I'm passing this extra object to allow conversion from string to double and vice versa, because GPA is a double and text is a string. And then I'm looking for the office field. Can you see it here? I'll ask the GPA pane, the grid pane. Can you give me the row of that office field? Why I'm asking for the row of the office field? To remove it. And I'll go to grid pane, get children, remove remove any row where the row is equal to this row to remove. That's it, very easy. Are you following? So basically this form or this window that you see that has the fields to be able to update the student or update the faculty, it receives a member as a parameter. And based on that member, I make an if statement. If it is student, I bind the text field, the GPA text field with the GPA property. And then I remove the row where we have an office number. And for the faculty, I do the other way around. Can you see it here? If the member is faculty, what do I do? Bind the office field with the office property of the member. Look up the GPA field. Ask the grid pane, please give me the row of the GPA field. And what do I do with that row? I go ahead and remove it by using this grid pane.get children remove if. And that's it. That's the idea. That is the idea. Now, let me show you the controller here. Here is the controller for the grid. I mean the controller behind this grid. The controller behind this, not grid, I mean behind this table view. Yes, the controller behind the table view. The controller behind the table view, almost no change from what I explained last time. So what I have here, this is the update. Remember the update? So in the update, the only thing I changed, notice if I do here update, what the title says, update faculty. It knows that it's faculty. If I do here update student. So that's the only change I did. And the way I did it's very simple. All I did, I went and said, okay, let me just sit here. So in here, what I'm doing here, I go to the members table and say get selection model, get selected item. This will give me the selected member from the table. Yeah. I mean when I click When I click on this one, every time I click, this will give me the member that was clicked. How do I get the member that was clicked? By this line here. Yes? Table member, get selection model, get selected item. Then I construct the dialog title. Can you see it here? Construct the dialog title. The dialog title is the member.getClass.getSimple name. We've seen this method before. And then I'll say update the class name. This way I have the title of the text, the title of the dialog box dynamic. Instead of saying update member, it could be either update student or update faculty. Now the rest, no change whatsoever. I mean in terms of update. So basically, if you recall, I load the fxml file, then I ask the fxml loader to give me the controller associated with this fxml. I use that controller to set the member. Basically, pass the member to the dialog box. That's it. Okay, and then I'll show the dialog box. Now for add, let me show you for add. For add, instead of having a button, I have a button menu where I can select here and say either I want to add student, you see here add student, or I want to do add faculty. Yeah. Okay, so let me show you how that is done. So if I go to the members view, and then I go to the theme builder. So in here, instead of having a button, I have a menu button. So you can hear menu button. Here's the menu button. You can even drag one here, for example. And the menu button, as the name suggests, it has a menu items. So you can go ahead and say, for example, here, in your case, it might be here car. Maybe this one is a truck. It's truck with A or U? With U, yes. Okay, if I go, and then I can, of course, also change this one to add. And this plus is just an emoji. You know the trick. Okay, so Control P, and here is the add. Very simple, add truck. And then what I have in this add, I have an event handlers. Can you see it here? An event handler associated with my student. Add student, handle add. Can you see it? Handle add. And the same thing for faculty, handle add. So I have handle add for both. And that's it. There is no change. Now for the controller, let me show you what is new in the controller. Here's my handle add. Here's my handle add. What handle add does? It takes you to handle update. Why? To reuse. Because add and update are exactly the same, almost the same. What's the difference between add and update? In add, you have a new object, and you give that object to the dialog box, and you show an empty form, and you allow the user to enter the data. In update, what you have? An existing object, and you take that object, you pass it to the form. You pass it to the grid. No, sorry, not the grid, like the dialog box. Yes? So they are exactly the same in terms of behave, except in add, it is dealing with a new empty object. In update, it's dealing with an existing, already instantiated object. So that's why when the user clicks add and say go to update, it will help you. This is how I reuse the update. And in the update, what I do is, how do I find out which button was clicked? By going to the event.getSource.equal, and I'll ask it, from where the event came. Did it came from the update button? This is the logic I will do. Did it came from the add student? This is the logic. Did it came from add faculty? This is the logic. So in here, this is I put what is different, and the rest is the same. So if it came from add student, what I will do, this form will be open in add mode, and the dialog box title will be add student. And then in here, member equal new student, because I'm adding a new student. Now, if the event came from faculty menu item, it is still add. And what will be the title of the text box? Add faculty. And what we will be creating? A new faculty. Okay. The rest is the same. All this is reused for add and update is the same. Okay. Everything is the same. Now, once the dialog box is closed, remember the dialog box is shown and the system waits for it to close. Once it waits and once the dialog box closes, we will get a button type and we check if it's okay. I find out whether I open the form in an add mode or update mode. If I open this in update mode, I don't need to do anything. Because of binding, any change I do in the dialog box is already reflected in the table view. And for add, if the mode of operation is add, what do I do with the member? Add it to the observable list. Do I do anything for this to appear in the table view? No, it just appears magically because the table view is watching the observable list. Any change will be auto-reflected. Yeah. So this way you can see here, it's very nicely done. A lot of stuff are reused. Instead of having, in this scenario, instead of having 4 forms, one for add student, one for update student, another one for add faculty, another one for update faculty, what do I have? One form and one method to deal with all the scenarios. And the main thing here, if I need to do any customization, as I showed you here in the member controller, I basically check the member, ask the member, are you faculty? If yes, I'll do some little bit of customization, custom behave. And I'll ask, if are you a student? Then I'll do different customization. So what I have here, things that are common, I don't want to repeat them. And then I do small customization based on the instance type, whether it is student or faculty. Yeah. If it is too much and you find it confusing, you can have multiple forms if you wish. Up to you. But this one, if you understand it and go through the example a little bit more details, it will be very clear and you can save time and effort. And in real world, not only time and effort, also if something change, you change it in one place. This is the power of reusing. We discussed this before. It's not only the effort. You might say, okay, who cares? I will do one and copy it carefully and then do the changes and do a third one and copy it and change it. But the price, you will pay the price not now, later if there is some change. Then you have to do 4 copies that you have copied. It's time now to go and change the 4 copies. But what I mean by change, let me give you just a small example. Small example of the change. Like here is the update. In some countries, they want you to put last name first, or the business people or whoever, the user said, no, I want you to put the last name first. If you created 4 forms, good luck. You have to go open them in Scene Viewer and fiddle around with them to swap. This is just a small example of change. But if you have 1 copy, all I do now, because it is shared, I'll just go ahead and do it in one place, and all of them will get it. Yeah? Okay, so is this clear? All right, so let me summarize the journey before I let you go. Yes, please.
How did you put the attributes in updates?
How did I put?
An update form.
Yes. In the update form. Okay. You see here in update, how did I? The values here?
Yeah.
How did I put these values here? Anybody can help? Sorry? Using bidirectional binding. So let me show you the journey very quickly. So remember, my form is here. Here's my editor form or dialog box. Yes? So this one is an fxml file. Behind it is a controller. What is the name of the controller? Member controller. Yes. Now, I open it as a dialog box. It's opened from the main controller, which is the members controller. I open it as a dialog box. And I explained before how to open it as a dialog box. You load the fxml file. You also load the controller associated with the view. And then what I did in the controller, I did a method there called SetMember. I created a method called SetMember. Why did I create this method called SetMember? To pass the member from the main form to the dialog box. Yes. And in the SetMember, all the tricks are there. In this SetMember, what do you think I will have there? The binder. Take a look. Yeah. Once I save it in case I need it later, and then I start doing bidirectional binding. Say, okay, ID property gets binded with the ID field text property, and so on. Except for Office, no, for the GPA, I'm not going to bind it in all cases. Only bind it in the case the member is a student, and delete the Office. And in case the member is faculty, do the binding for the Office and delete the GPA. And because they are bind, take a look at the power of binding. So if you look carefully here, as I start changing, can you see it changing in the yes, can you see it changing in the table? Because the table, the object there, I passed it, the same object, I passed it to the dialog box. And because of binding, any change in the text box is automatically reflected in the object. And because the object is stored in an observable list, any change in the observable list is notified to the table view, and the table view shows the updates immediately. You got the idea. So that's the trick. There's one more thing I didn't show you, which is the validation. You see here, if you don't provide mandatory fields or must-have fields, I can do validation. Okay. So in validation, that's I think the only thing I didn't show you. In here, it's a little bit tricky. Remember that the buttons, I didn't add them myself. If you remember the dialog box, I asked the dialog box to add the buttons. But I can get these buttons if I want to program them. I can get them. I go to the dialog box and say, look up button. Look for me if you have any OK button. Give it to me. I'm interested in doing something with it. And then I'll add a listener and say, go ahead and validate the form. Take a look at what validate the form does. It says if the ID field is empty or it has 0, then show this alert and don't let the user go ahead. For each column, for each attribute, I do this. If the name field, if the last name field is empty, I'll show this return false, and so on. Yes. For GPA, I do, if the member is a student, then I do this validation. Otherwise, I don't do it. Yes? Now, how do I, in here, if the validation fails, I go to event.consume. It's just a way they have designed it. If you do event.consume, this will cancel closing the form. You see the normal behave. Can you take a look at this? The normal behave. Let me just, yes, the normal behave is that this is the normal behave. When I click, it's closed. But when there is a problem, when I click here and the user must type the email, then I don't close. I cancel the closing. How do I cancel the closing? They go to event.consume, which means, khalas, this event, don't let it continue its journey. Stop it there because the form is not valid.